So the IRS recently issued a press release talking about 5 additional warning signs of an incorrect ERC claim. And top of that list was a comment that essential businesses that could fully operate weren't eligible for the ERC. So a number of folks reached out to me and said, hey, wait a minute, I'm really confused with this because that seems like it's different than what's been discussed previously. So I figured I'd dive into the press release, what it says, as well as previous language that was provided by the IRS about essential businesses. So let's dive in. You may recall from the other video I did, I went through and I talked about the language that the IRS uses about the ERC in essential business. So I'm going to share my screen here. So you may recall that the IRS stated that essential businesses during the pandemic that could fully operate, didn't have a decline in gross receipts, were not eligible, that they don't qualify in the rules passed by Congress. So let's take a look at the language here. So first off, the key word here is could fully operate. So did the IRS really intend to say this? Well, yes, they said if a business could fully operate, if it was not subject to mandates that either fully or partially suspended operations, and it could fully operate and have a decreased gross receipts, then it's not eligible. But that seems to contradict a little bit with the IRS FAQs that were released back in September of 2023. And so question 6 of the FAQ says, how does being an essential business affect my eligibility for the ERC? And very clearly here, it states that being an essential business doesn't necessarily mean you're ineligible for the ERC. You may be eligible for based off the gross receipts test, or, and this is the key part of it, if you could show that you experienced a partial suspension of operations due to an order from an appropriate governmental authority. And that's the key part here. So if there's a governmental authority that affected your business, that was applicable to your business, and that resulted in a partial suspension of operations, then an essential business could still be eligible due to a partial suspension. And so the IRS references notice 2021-20. That's the big, long rule book, over 100 pages, related to different eligibility questions. And so section 3D, question 17, example 4, talks about it. And this example they talk about here, there's a few examples in question 17, but example 4 talks specifically about a hospital, for example. So a hospital had certain elements that were essential, that were allowed to continue to work regardless because they were essential to the public safety, public health of the geography in which they operate in. However, certain procedures, certain activities were limited. So certain elective procedures, for example, were often limited during COVID by government mandate. Those elective procedures oftentimes were more than a nominal part of the hospital's business and resulted in a more than nominal suspension of operations. So again, the test of the partial suspension is multi-layered and includes the specific government mandate, the applicability to your individual business, and importantly, the modifications you were forced to put in place in order to comply with these mandates. The rules are not the same for everybody in every geography. Every geography had a different set of rules for essential versus not essential versus the different types of businesses at the state level, sometimes at the county level, sometimes there are multiple regulatory bodies issuing COVID orders in addition to the public health orders or the executive level orders that were issued. So it's a multi-layered test. Essential businesses certainly can be eligible for the ERC if they could document the mandates, the specific mandates they were subject to operate under, and the modifications that resulted in a limitation of their ability to provide goods and services in ordinary course of not less than 10%. Hope that's helpful. Hope that helps lower the blood pressure for some of you a little bit. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Happy to chat.